Circus is coming through. Everybody knows that when you purchase a ticket, you expect to get a show. Take a look at me. I'm just
all right, welcome to the Mid-Coast Scuba Podcast. It's been a minute. I've got two really cool guests with me here today. I've got Tom and Aaron Morris. Actually, just some fresh, newly minted open water divers. Is that right?
That's right.
That's right. Is it a month?
Let's see. Been right at a month, I think.
Right out a month.
See?
Yeah. So, if you guys don't mind, how about each of you just kind of tell me a little bit about yourself and what made you decide that you wanted to scuba dive?
Say, I'm Tom Morris, mid-30s. I've always wanted to scuba dive. I just didn't realize how, easy it was to actually get certified. I thought it was like a whole process. Like, you had to go to school and everything else for it. I had no idea. And my wife signed me up for it for a Father's Day present because she knew I always wanted to do it. And one of the better things she's ever done.
That's super
Don't
cool.
tell her.
Yeah, I'm Aaron Morris. I'm Tommy's little brother. That's actually kind of what my wife says. Like, whatever he gets into, I kind of get into too. It's a little brother mentality. But actually, no, I've always been interested in scuba diving. I just never took the initiative to make that happen. I've always been, kind of drawn to the water, oceans, lakes, rivers, whatever. I've always wanted, it's been like a goal of mine to swim with sharks. I'd never really put two and two together that like scuba diving could be part of that. And then I heard you was taking the class. I'm like, shit, I'm right there with you. Let's get in it.
Very, very cool. So this is going to be kind of a little bit different format than what most of the episodes have been. I'm going to let you guys interview me because as new divers, you guys expressed that you've got quite a few questions about diving in general and continuing with your education as divers. I thought that was really cool. And what better way to kind of, answer those questions for people than, new divers other than just have the new divers ask the questions. So I'm going to kick it back over to you guys and I'm going to let you interview me. So whoever wants to go first.
Well, I think one of my big questions is, the more I've looked into it, the more I realize I don't know about scuba diving. So, as a brand new diver, I'm just curious, like looking forward into more classes, what should I have done or what do I need to do before taking advanced open water or rescue diver or is there something I should be doing before I even sign up for those classes?
Well, the easy answer for that is you should be diving, right?
Right.
You need to, in full disclosure, I was these guys' instructors for their open water checkouts. Instructor, there was only one of me. But literally what I told the class on that weekend, I really do wholeheartedly believe is that at the end of your open water certification, you really need to look at that as now you have a license to go forth and learn. Because just like what you guys kind of alluded to, there is a lot that you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. But the open water class, what that really is about is giving you the skill set to go do this safely and not have to be under the watchful eye of a professional. To that end, your question is well, how soon or how long should I wait before I go to advanced or go to rescue? For rescue, I really kind of wholeheartedly believe that people should be able to go onto that right away because that is probably the most valuable class you will take. But you need to have your skill sets laid out, right? Typically, people will do advanced before they do rescue. Advanced, you can technically enroll in that class the day after you get done with your open water. But I would probably make the argument before you go on to take advanced, you really need to have a pretty solid foundational skill set with your buoyancy, right? Okay. If you can't hold your position within, call it plus or minus 3 feet, You're bouncing off the bottom, cratering the bottom. Advanced is it's not going to be impossible, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And by what I mean by that is you've only got one goal when you're in open water, right? That's to go out and come back with no less than how much gas in your tank?
500.
500 psi bare minimum. That's your reserve. Go out, do your dive, come back with no less than that, and it was a successful dive.
That's right.
So we talk about as you progress in your classes, you start looking more outward. If you imagine you're in a bubble. In open water, you're just looking at yourself, right? Yourself and your buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Did we go out? Did we complete the dive? Did we come back with no less than 500 pounds in our tank? If we did, awesome. We did everything we were supposed to do. When you get to advanced, you're still going to do all of that, but now we're going to start giving you other mission components, other task loading, things to do on top of that. And if you're already fighting one thing and you're trying to do another, like I'm teaching you how to put a lift bag on and you're having a hell of a time just trying to control your buoyancy, probably not going to have the funnest time with it.
Right.
So I'd make the argument that go out and dive, get some dives under your belt, get comfortable with your buoyancy, with the gear, and then move on to the advanced class before you do that.
Okay.
On the rescue side of it, again, looking at that bubble. So open water, you're pretty much looking at yourself. Advanced, you start looking at some task loading. By the time you get to rescue, now you're not only watching after yourself and then also doing something, but now you're watching everybody else around you.
Right.
And that class is fantastic, and probably the funnest class you'll ever take too.
I know when we were just doing the open water, every single dive master there specifically said you should take rescue. Every one of them said it was an amazing class.
There's not really a lot of diving in rescue. You only do maybe a couple technically classifiable dives. The rest of it is a lot of learning how to get in and out of your gear really quickly without taking your eyes off somebody, and all the techniques you need to deal with panic divers on the surface, underwater, unresponsive divers at the surface underwater, and it really is a lot of fun. And the other part of I love about it too that I found really, really interesting way back when I took it, and one of the things I love about teaching it is this whole psychology of it. I think I told you guys when you showed up for class, or maybe the night after that first day, we're all reading the students when they come up. Because you can tell a lot of times if somebody's nervous or somebody's going to have an issue just by the way they're talking, by the way their eyes are moving. With experienced divers, you can tell a lot by looking at their gear, especially after you got some experience. Like, maybe this person doesn't have the best history of maintaining their gear. This might be a problem.
Right.
Things like that. So.
Yeah, well, that actually reminds me of another question I had. Is there like a class that kind of, or I don't know if it's a class or just somewhere you can find information on gear maintenance? Is that just something you just kind of pick up piece by piece, or how does that work?
Absolutely. They're kind of laughing about the PADI system. There's a class for everything. So there is a class called Equipment Specialist that is actually a really great class. We have an instructor at the shop that does a really great job of teaching it. But basically, you will learn all of the maintenance points on your gear that you can take care of yourself. Potential failure points, and basically we teach you how to build a save a dive kit so that you basically can tackle most problems. There is a fair component of just the more you dive, you're going to start just kind of learning your own gear and learning things. Now, part of that equipment course also is teaching you what things that you shouldn't be working on yourself, because there are certain things that you really need to have very specialized training for. For instance, doing your annual rebuild on your regulators. average Joe can't do that on their own. In fact, they won't even sell you the parts, and there's reasons for that, right?
Taking your own safety into your hands.
Yeah, exactly. But there is maintenance that you can do on them yourself, as far as just checking O-rings, replacing O-rings, especially on the ends of your hoses, things like that, checking your hoses for cracks, your BCD, things like that. But it's a really great class to take. And we also go into tanks as well, looking at tanks, replacing O-rings on tanks, making sure that they're in good order, things like that. So.
Good to know.
That's what I was just thinking about when you, just a couple minutes ago, you popped open that regulator, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, is that something I could do? Or is that, do I have to go get my gear serviced now? If I happen to unscrew my regulator like that?
Well, yeah, so, yes. So what I did, I popped off the faceplate off your regulator. Yeah, that's probably something, because from time to time, especially people will drag the regulators through the rocks or things like that. You can get a rock in there in between the diaphragm and the lever arm on it, and it can cause free flows, things like that. Sometimes, you got to pop them open. Or you could have a torn diaphragm, something like that. It's not really a big deal to pop those off, but from there, getting into the internals, that's where you really need to have a licensed technician work on them. And then, believe it or not, one of the things you learn in the equipment class, as gross as it sounds, that little mushroom valve, the exhaust valve, there's something about that if it's like cockroach bait. And if you leave your gear sitting out in a garage for years or decades, there's a good chance cockroaches are going to get in there and chew it up. So that's something you got to check for. That's something that we go over in the equipment course.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things my wife has been talking to me about. I'm starting to slowly build my equipment, together. And so her whole thing, I've been looking, just checking Facebook Marketplace just to see what's out there. She's of the opinion that I should just buy everything brand new, because no telling, what happened to it before I bought it. Anything you buy used should probably be serviced anyways. Is that
100%?
Right?
Yeah, it's life support equipment. I won't lie to you. Regulators, especially quality ones like Scuba Pro and Oceanic, Hollis, Dive Right. Not sponsored by any of those. Just naming off some quality regulators. Technically, they'll never wear out as long as you have them serviced at regular intervals. So if they were taken care of, okay, there's certainly nothing wrong with buying a used one, with the caveat. I would never, ever buy a used regulator off the internet and then go dive it. I would take it in and have it serviced. Even if that person said it's literally fresh off a service, you need to take it in and have it serviced.
Why risk it? Why risk it?
It's life support, right? They're the Scuba Pro Mark II, and I just know this from when I took my Scuba Pro service tech class. They told a story of a guy in the Caribbean that literally had it for decades, had a Mark II for decades, and he never serviced it. And to the point, he just opened it and he'd smear Vaseline on it and slap it back together. To the point where Scuba Pro, and he was touting this, saying, hey, this thing is just incredible. It never breaks down. To the point where Scuba Pro finally was like, hey, man, we'll give you a new regulator if you promise to start servicing it. But, yeah, and they're...
Life hack.
Yeah, don't do that, by the way. Have it serviced. But, there's nothing wrong with buying used gear. I did it when I first started diving. Everybody, you want to get a good deal, and there are good deals to be had out there. I think I would probably throw out the biggest thing is if you're going to buy gear, used gear, seek out an experienced diver, ask them advice, see what they think about it. Because I'll tell you from experience, you'll go out and you'll buy a bunch of gear, and then you'll realize that wasn't really the gear you wanted. And or maybe something would work for you a little bit better, and it'll be a never-ending cycle. Nothing wrong with getting used gear. Just make sure, especially on life support stuff, that you get it serviced. Even with a BCD, you're going to want to take it in, and those, believe it or not, have a service on them as well. Take it in, have it checked, have the inflator serviced on it, because you don't want to have any issues. Yeah, like a set of fins, worst things you have, you're going to have a broken fin strap, right?
Sure. Right.
So, great questions.
Another one I have is, obviously I'm brand new at this and I don't know exactly where I want to go, but I'm more interested in the tech side. As of now, looking to buy gear. Was there certain things I should be looking for so that I can evolve into tech diving versus recreational diving? Obviously I have a long way to get there, but
yeah, I'm going to give you a really honest answer on this. Being that you're 1 month out of open water, don't worry about going out and look for tech gear.
right.
Because
Okay.
by the time you are ready, it's not going to be what you wanted. Just hold off on that. The only exception I would probably pose on that is, one of the first pieces of gear that people buy, and for good reason, is a computer. And if you do see your future is wanting to be on the tech side of things, go ahead and get a tech-capable computer so that you know it inside and out by the time you get there. It needs to be able to, do multiple gases. It needs to, of course, be able to do deco and all those things. Probably want one that's trimix capable. But as far as like regulators and BCDs and stuff like that, I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Okay.
The other side of that is a lot of people, especially new divers, come in and they say, well, I want to get this BCD, and can I do tech diving with this BCD? Yeah, you technically can, but by the time you're there and you're ready, you're going to have a BCD for every occasion.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah. One other thing I was thinking of, so obviously here we are mid-coast, Kansas, trying to scuba dive and just get dives under our belt for practice. I mean, the easiest way right now, obviously, is just to go spend some time in the pool.
Mhm.
That's the closest thing. Instead of trying to, make a trip, plan a trip and get out of town. What's the best way we can most efficiently use our time in the pool?
Yeah. So I'll be another upfront answer with you. You guys will be excited about going into the pool just because it's a chance to get wet for a while, but eventually that's going to get boring, right? So the most efficient use of time in the pool is working on that buoyancy, because believe it or not, that 10 feet from the surface to the bottom of the deep end of the pool, and it's fresh water, is the most difficult place to have good buoyancy, because there's such a huge swing in the pressure. So if you start to drift off, you guys know from when you're in the pool, right? You probably had when you guys first started, not throwing you guys on the bus, just saying this is what I see with most students, to the surface or to the bottom. And it took you a while to kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
So what I would recommend, especially for you guys, since you're going to dive together a lot, get you some wet notes and go down, hover off the bottom, a foot, 2 feet off the bottom, nice trim position, take those wet notes and start playing tic-tac-toe. And you put your X, you hand it over to Aaron, Aaron puts his O, he hands it back to you. And you guys just work on handing that back and forth, maintaining your position, hovering about a foot or 2 feet off the bottom, not moving all around, just staying nice and still in that neutral position. And this is the guarantee I'll give you. If you get to the point where you can start playing games and tic-tac-toe, maybe writing jokes back and forth to one another, and you get to the point where you're not even thinking about your buoyancy, you're damn good at buoyancy at that point.
That's pretty solid. I would have never thought of that.
Nope. So,
another just generally curious thing I have is, like, what is a dive master? Like, obviously I'm a long way from that, but like, I just don't even know how you become one. Like, what classifies you as a dive master? There was quite a few of them at our open water class.
Yeah.
I just don't know what makes you a dive master.
that's a great question. So I'll start off by saying there's master divers, and then there's dive masters.
Okay.
And they're two different things. So there are master divers and there are dive masters. They sound the same. People get them confused all the time, but they're two very different things. A master diver is a recreational diver who has logged 50 dives and has at least 5 specialties underneath their belt. It is a designation that kind of says, okay, this person is experienced. They've done some things. They're a fairly experienced diver. A dive master is the first professional rating that you can get. So in the instance of like open water classes, dive masters can teach a few things, not a lot of things, but they can assist the instructors. So the portal or the pipeline, if you were to want to become a professional, and let me just back up a few steps. So you guys are open water. Your next step will be become an advanced open water. And then your next option is to be a rescue diver. From that point, you have topped out as far as what ratings goes for recreational divers. You can, of course, do specialties and you can get your master scuba diver rating. But at that point, there's really no further you can go other than just gaining experience until you decide you want to cross over and become a professional. So when you become a professional, now you can assist with students, you can assist instructors, you can teach or conduct discover scuba diving programs. So people that have never dove before, you can get them in the pool, you can show them what it's like to breathe underwater, and you can also run refresher courses. So people that haven't dove in a while, they can come back and you basically run them through a very abbreviated confined water class and go through all those skills with them again. You can do all of that as a dive master. The process of becoming one is you need to have a good amount of experience as a diver. Technically per PADI standard, you only have to have 40 log dives. I'll be honest with you, that is not enough. There are people that try to do what they call the 0 to hero, and they try to rush through it. I would make the argument that if you're not a competent enough diver to where you don't have to, I'm trying to think of the best way to word it. Not that you're not concerned with yourself, but you're comfortable enough that you're not worried about taking care of yourself. You're probably not ready to move on to dive master. But it's 40 log dives to start the program, 60 by the time you're done, and you'll easily have 60 at the end of the program because you do a lot of diving in Dive Master. But that class, it takes about 6 months to go through the whole process at our shop. There are what they call them instructor mills or dive master mills. Yeah, you can fly down to Florida and you can spend a week, and in a week you'll be a dive master. But it's very boom, 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 boom. Takes a little bit longer here because obviously we have seasons and we don't do, 7, 8 hour, 10 hour days. It's, we've got classroom work here and there. At a high level, you go through a very much more in-depth version of rescue. You will be an expert at rescuing people. You'll be an expert at reading people. You'll be an expert at being able to communicate with people both above and below the surface. You also go really in deep with dive theory. So you will know physics, physiology, not geography, but waves and wave actions, things like that. Environment, that was the word I was looking for. And gear. You'll know all that inside and out. And every step you get, especially once you get past or get over to the professional side, goes a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper. But yeah, that's kind of the core. And then once you're a dive master, you're now technically a diving professional. You can lead students. That's the other deal you can do as a dive master is you can conduct what they call discover local diving. We don't have a whole lot of that around here. But so say you guys were from Colorado and you came out and you said, hey, we want to go down and see the layout down at Beaver Lake. You can hire a dive master to take you down there and show you that. You also at that point have to pay professional dues to PADI every year, and then you have to carry liability insurance as well, which isn't a big deal, but minimal cost. I will say and be openly honest, and I know a lot of people have heard me tell this joke a million times. There are people that think that they're going to become a dive master and then that's going to be their retirement. But you know what the difference between a dive professional and a pizza is?
I do not.
A pizza can feed a family of 4.
Okay. Another question I have is, as a new diver, is like the Dan insurance something I should have, or is it something like once I get further on I should get, or what do you recommend on that? 'Cause I don't know literally almost anything about the Dan insurance besides.
Yeah, I would recommend anybody and everybody that's a diver carry Dan insurance. I do. For one, in preface, I have no affiliation with Dan other than I'm a patron. It really honestly is dirt cheap for what you get. I think I always buy the highest package they have or the most coverage package they have. I want to say it's $150 for the year. Covers up to, I think, $2 million in medical bills. Even covers your gear if you haven't, if you're on a trip and they got to cut you out of your wetsuit, they'll replace your wetsuit. I have a friend who just this summer got bent down in Mexico and had to take a couple chamber rides. And if she did not have Dan insurance, it would have cost her about $75,000.
Ouch.
So it's definitely worth having. Not only do I have Dan liability insurance, but it's also where my professional instructor insurance comes through. I know there's been a lot of back and forth about it. There was some other some other podcasters that had an issue with Dan, and they were kind of on the fence about it. But I've never had anything other than positive interactions with them. Knock on wood. Never needed it,
Right.
but it's I recommend it for anybody. It's super cheap, and it's, with no pun intended, it's cheap insurance, right? Or I guess pun intended.
Yeah, I've got a question about just underwater communication.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was listening to the other podcast with January's on there, and they're talking about how they've just dive together so often that they know everything that's going on in each other's heads, and they can communicate that. I mean, obviously, I know the basics. You need to go up, go down. I've got a problem.
Yeah.
Things like that. Okay, but how do you go beyond that? Is it just something you work out with a buddy, or is there like a class of like set of other set communications you can use?
Yeah, so I'm just kind of laughing about it because you guys are going to develop your own, and everybody does. There's no real class for it. Some of it, full disclosure, like with me and my dive buddies, some of the signs and signals we come up with is just literally trying to make each other laugh underwater. Nobody can see it because it's a podcast, but one of my favorite ones is, if you hold your finger like this with the crook in it, this means I've got a question, right? So if I look at, and this is a real signal that you'll find, especially you get in the tech world. It's like, hey, question. So one of the big ones is question, where is the boat? Okay, so you throw your hands out to the side, kind of like jazz hands, and then boat is the boat signal you guys learned in open water. You kind of cup your hands together in a V. Then the other person says, they make the okay sign, and then they start tapping the front of their nose. Who fucking knows? Get it? So, you'll come up with your own signals for that. A lot of when you get on the tech side of that, a lot of it, and even on the recreational side, it makes a lot of sense, is developing signals that you only need one hand to use because usually you've got something else going on, other task loading, things like that. So, like with your numbers, we taught you guys to do thousands on the arm and hundreds with your hand, or two hands. So if you have 7, but you can do it with one hand. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
That's the way.
Yeah.
Like Thomas did as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, signals are just kind of one of those deals. You'll just come up with it. My buddy Scott, he's got a big beard similar to yours. And so the signal for Scott is to just do this, kind of like you're brushing your beard. And so, Chris will come up to me and say, question, where's Scott? You know, and then I say, who fucking knows? Yeah. So
you're sure you just kind of pick it up as you go.
Yeah, you just kind of pick it up,
work it out.
There's all the standard signals, but then there's the, and I'll tell you what, the people who are really great at the signals, you go down like in the Caribbean and stuff, and it seems like they've got a signal for every different fish and thing that goes by. I'm like, I don't know what the hell this guy's doing, but yeah, you just kind of come up with your own signals over time.
Sure.
Okay, what's your opinion on wetsuits? Like, as a bigger guy, I don't get cold that easy, but like, especially like swimming in the Caribbean or something where the water's warm, do you still say we should have like a full wetsuit on for like a rash guard type thing, or just to protect us? Or
and for what it's worth, I've got lots of bioprene too, so I know what you're talking about. So I'll just give you an example. Like down in Bon Air, I don't tend to wear any sort of wetsuit. I might wear my tech shorts and maybe a lava core top or something like that. It's always very, very personal. Kind of my thresholds are anything below 70 degrees, I'm going to be in a dry suit. 70 to 75, I'll probably be in a 5 mil, and then 75 to 80 would be like a 3 mil for me. When you go down the Caribbean, if you're in the 85 degree water, if you tend to be a warm diver and you don't really get cold, you're really only looking to be protected from the stingy things, fire coral, jellyfish, stuff like that. So just literally probably a rash guard is fine. I mean, I don't wear a full wetsuit when I go down in that water.
I have a random question. I think you probably have some experience on this, and just looking at you've got quite a few tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any issues with diving with a new tattoo?
Well, it's just standard.
Other than the tattoo artwork itself, having issues.
No, it's just
something you think about.
No, just standard like tattoo aftercare. You've got. For me, it seems like it takes about 2 weeks for me to be fully healed to the point where I'm okay submerging it in water. But yeah, no, like you won't notice anything else on it. Just no.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I'm gonna have like nitrogen bubbling up through my tattoo ink or anything.
No. Well, like I said, I've got quite a few. I've never noticed any issues with it. The only issue I had when I had to teach a class like 5 days after I got a lot of work done on my leg, and it's like, so I had to get in the pool with my dry suit on, and that sucked with it just being stuck on the tattoo all day. It was so sore. But other than that, no issues with diving with tattoos. So I can't remember. It might have been your guys' class about a month ago. One of the students at check-in came walking up to me and they said, "You've got to be the instructor because I've noticed that most dive instructors have some sort of sea creature tattooed on them." And I've got, my right leg, I've got a big octopus going down my leg. I was like, well, you're not wrong. So, yeah.
Can you explain the difference between a wetsuit and a dry suit? Besides, obviously, one's wet and one's dry. I don't know personally anything about the dry suit. Like, I know there's a separate class for a dry suit, but there's not a separate class for a wetsuit. So
yeah, well, and so there's a reason for that. So the obvious answer to start that off is a wetsuit, you get wet. In a dry suit, you're supposed to stay dry. You rarely do. You'll always be just a little bit, it'll either be sweat or you'll have just a little bit of moisture in the suit. But for all intents and purposes, the dry suit, they call them a bag. You basically have seals around your wrist and seal around your neck. And your body inside is supposed to stay dry. You don't have any water coming into the suit. A wetsuit keeps you warm by allowing water in, and your body temperature warms that layer of water up. And then the suit, what it's doing is it's slowing the transfer of water down so that it's not constantly sapping your body heat out. The dry suit works on the other end of that spectrum. It doesn't allow any water in, but believe it or not, a dry suit also does nothing to keep you warm. It's what you wear under the dry suit. So if you for me, if I'm going to dive in like 70-degree water and I'm going to wear my wetsuit, I just wear some light, like Long John thermals underneath it, be fine. I've even just worn shorts and a t-shirt underneath it. But if I'm going to go down deep at the lake or dive in the winter when it's, the water's 40 degrees, pretty much got a full kind of almost like snowsuit on underneath it. The reason that there's no class for a wetsuit and there is for a dry suit is a dry suit, if you don't know what you're doing with it, it can really hurt you. There not too long ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago, there was a young girl that was put in a dry suit without any training in Wyoming and took out on a training dive, and she ended up drowning because they had her severely overweighted. They didn't hook up her inflator because you have an inflator on the dry suit, and she ended up getting in a runaway descent. And since she couldn't put air in the suit, it will squeeze you to the point you can't breathe because it's an air cell. And you go down and all that gas starts compressing. So you have to actually add air into the suit to offset that. Patty will let me teach open water students in a dry suit, but before that, I have to give them a dry suit course or a primer on the dry suit. So if you're gonna dive dry, that is one I will tell you you absolutely need and should take the course on. In most places, you can rent dry suits. They won't rent them to you if you don't have your card. But yeah, it's something you need to know, and it's nothing outlandishly difficult. Kind of goes back to what you were saying, Aaron, about you just don't know what you don't know. So there's a few techniques that you need to learn, because one of the easiest things to happen in a dry suit, if you're not careful, is you can get in a runaway ascent. But guess how you're going up in a runaway ascent in a dry suit? You're going feet first, because all that air is going to go to your feet and it's going to flip you upside down. And we have an instructor that had an issue with a dry suit. He was on a really deep dive, and his inflator actually got stuck, and it was just bleeding air into the suit. And so all of a sudden he's in a runaway. He was lucky enough, he caught a tree and was able to grab himself. I mean, he was to the point where he was getting ready to just pull the neck and dump it, which would have sucked. But he was able to get it under control. But those are just things that, if he wouldn't have been trained on it, he probably wouldn't have not known what was happening until it was too late. Yeah.
Wouldn't have had time for his deco stops and had been in trouble.
Yeah, no, he probably definitely would have been taking an ambulance ride on that one. So
it's no fun for anybody. Another question. I know we talked a little bit about, back when we were talking about dive masters and things like that, and the specialties you have to get and you can get. Is each specialty its own class? What exactly is a specialty?
Yeah, so specialties are, some of them require diving, some of them don't. Nitrox, for instance, or enriched air, there's no diving in that. It's all academic. But basically what a specialty is you're going to pick some subset that you want to learn more about. So like in some specialties like the dry suit, you actually need to have that certification to be able to rent. So like one example would be like DPV, or diver propulsion vehicle. At the core, what specialties are doing, especially specialties that are dealing with something that could potentially be dangerous, really what you're learning is how to operate that function or that dive in a safe manner, right? So like with DPV, you're going to learn how to safely operate the DPV. One of the things that I do in the course that's not required is I kind of pull from the tech side, and I teach you how to calculate distances based on your given gas supply. Because, yeah, you're in open water, and if you have a problem, you can go up. But guess what? You don't have to be on the trigger very long, and you're 2 miles away from where you went in the water. So you're either going to have a really long swim with a broken DPV coming back, or you're going to have a really long swim at the surface because you didn't calculate your gas supply and you had to come up. So those are things you learn. there's an SMB class or a DSMB class. So for like safety sausages, which at the surface, a lot of people kind of joke about that and say, why would I need to take a class on that? For SMB, yeah, it's not that big a deal. You learn how to fill those up in your open water class. But shooting one from below the surface, if you don't know how to do that, you can get yourself into some trouble. Because you're essentially putting air in that thing and shooting it from 30, 40 feet down. If you get caught in that line, you're going to have a bad day because it's going to take you up with it. So there's little things like that. Some specialties, there's fish identification, things like those. They probably don't intrinsically have like a high safety value on them, but it's learning from somebody who's an expert, I would tell you like right now, and those are classes like that too. And this is really every class you're going to take as a diver. Interview the instructor. I would tell you if you guys came to me right now and said, "Hey Zach, we want to take fish ID from you," I'd be like, "No, you don't." It's like, because all I know is there's green ones, blue ones, big ones, little ones. You'd want to take it from somebody like one of our instructors, like Marty, who she's just really into that, and she's fantastic at identifying those things and just loves it to death. So you want to get instructors that are passionate about what they're teaching, because if they're passionate about it, it's going to come through in their instruction. But yeah, and there's a whole bunch of specialties. And if you really want to get down the rabbit hole, one of the interesting things that Patty does is they will allow instructors to create what are called distinctive specialties. So you can write your own specialty course and nobody can teach it but you or people you approve. So like examples of that were, like, I'm sure you guys have heard of Bonterre Mine over by St. Louis. Mm-hmm. They have a distinctive specialty that you can only get there, and you get your mine diver card, right? But one of the interesting things about creating a distinctive specialty, it has to be approved, but it also has to have a tangible value. So they have to put something in it you'll learn. We had an instructor years back that created one called Underwater Zombie Hunter. Okay. And I never got to look at his course outline, but he had things in there that help you hone your buoyancy and things like that. But it was basically look it up. But he had some interesting. Yeah, he had some interesting things in it.
So going to the mine diver like card, do you have to have that to go dive any mine, or
no? Okay. Well, so that's kind of a loaded question. So to go dive at Bonterre, no, you don't need it. If you go to pretty much any other mine, you've got to be a full cave diver. Okay. The only reason you're able to dive in Bonterre mine as an open water diver is because they've got there's lights everywhere. It's technically the parts they take you into, there's not really any overhead, and you've got guides with you. They'll put a guide in front of you and a guide behind you. But if you were to go, say, to, I'm not even going to say the name of it because I don't want people going to look for it, but there is another mine in Missouri that you absolutely, if you're going in there, you're going in there by yourself and it's 100% overhead, you have to be a full cave diver to go dive that.
Yeah, so I have no desire to be a cave diver. I'm too big for that anyways, but I enjoy the fish and all that, but like the thing I kind of want to get into is shipwrecks. Is that its own specialty? Like
it is. There's a wreck specialty, and in fact there's even more wreck specialties on top of that. So the wreck specialty, that's one that you just need to have. I can't recall if if open water, you need to have advanced open water for it. But you learn how to basically survey wrecks, how to do very, very limited penetration, meaning that if it's a wreck that's already set up for it, you can kind of go in there. No like technical penetration or anything like that. That sounded dirty. But there's 4 or 5 dives in the wreck specialty course. Really kind of cool. It's basically learning how to approach the wreck, how to dive it, how to basically position yourself around it, things like that. Things to note. Again, it's going into the things that you just don't know because you don't know. So hazard points, entanglement points, safety issues like that. Old wrecks that have been sitting on the bottom of the ocean for a while, guess what? They're rusty, they're jagged, they could cause silt outs. But then going beyond that, like myself and 2 other instructors in February, we're going down to Key Largo. We're going to get our advanced wreck certification, which is a technical course. We'll be going deep inside the wreck and things like that. It's pretty much kind of revisiting Full Cave. But
Heck yeah.
Cool.
Let me see.
I will throw out, if being that you're interested in wreck diving, there is probably what I would say is a kind of a set of specialties that will help gear you towards that sort of diving. One is you're probably going to eventually want to get a dry suit because there's tons of wreck diving in the Great Lakes, and you're not going to want to do that in wet. The other side of it is probably looking at, maybe self-reliant, just so you get used to some redundant gas sources, things like that, in the planning for those. That SMB course probably isn't a bad one, learning how to shoot bags from underneath the water. Things like that really, really pay off for certs like that. And then not from the standpoint of, penetrating the wreck and diving lights out, but night diver is a good one too, because those wrecks are fantastic to dive at night too, right?
Yeah.
So,
another random question: do you have any advice on air management? Just a few dives we've had. I've tried to experiment a little bit with just like breathing how I normally would versus slower, deeper breaths, and I don't have enough data points to know what's really the kind of best way to go about it. What would you recommend?
Yeah, so you're asking a question that a lot of new divers ask. I ask it myself when I was a new diver. I'm burning through gas way faster than everybody else, right? The short, easy answer is it's all about keeping your heart rate down. Don't swim too fast. Don't get overly, anxious. Keep your heart rate low. If you do those things, then your gas consumption will stay down. A lot of it too is new divers don't even realize they're doing it. They're breathing on way fuller lungs than what they normally would, or what you really even need to, because there's some anxiety about being underwater. It's not a natural thing to be breathing underwater. That's also consequently why new divers a lot of times need more weight than what they probably really do, because they're holding a lot more air in their lungs because, oh crap, I'm underwater. I need more air in my lungs, right? The more you do it, the better it will get. I will strongly make the argument, don't go out and get bigger tanks and don't go out and do all this stuff, because give it some time. The better you get at it, the more you do it, the more relaxed you are, the better your gas consumption will be. I'm a big dude. I love it when I go down for a class and I'm, out breathing people that are a quarter my size, and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just not swimming my ass off like you are. I'm taking it nice and easy. They call it the lazy man sport, and it's not because it's for, you can be out of shape. That has nothing to do with it. It's because you want to do everything as slowly and as efficiently as possible. So another big key to that is, like, when you're gearing up, like, you guys ever get in the water and then you're like, oh, you're kind of huffing and puffing because you just carried all that gear down with you? Take 5 minutes and just sit in the water. Stick your face in the water, cool it off. Just relax. Get your heart rate back down before you drop below the surface. You'll see a huge change on that. And then, so I know you have a Mark III now too, right?
Right.
That is a really useful tool as well. So any computer that calculates your air time remaining, your bottom time remaining, anything like that, throughout the dive, just check that and look at it. And then if it seems real short, just kind of stop, relax, get kind of zen, and then you'll see that number start ticking back up. And that can kind of give you some interesting metrics on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd play with that in the pool too and just watch. It's really interesting. It's interesting to see what those numbers do, difference when you're swimming versus just when you stop. It's really interesting. But the big deal is just learning to be efficient. I'm a big proponent of frog kicking. I think it's way more efficient than scissor kicking. The more efficient you are, the lower you keep your heart rate, the longer your dive times are going to be.
I think the last kind of question I have, might even be a stupid question, I don't know. Being new to diving, I joined a bunch of the Facebook groups and everything else, and like everybody on there talks crap about people with split fins, and like, what is the stereotype with split fins? Or are they really that bad? Or
yeah, so they have I will be open and say they have a place, but it is for a very distinctive person. A lot of the hate you see on split fins is because they were kind of a fad item for a while. It came out, and a lot of people went and rushed out and bought them, and a lot of the people that went and rushed out and bought them were kind of the gadget type people. The problem with split fins is and a lot of the reason why more experienced divers, especially tech divers, just loathe them, is you won't ever see a tech diver in split fins, but they create a lot of turbulence in the water, which silts up really bad. A lot of the divers that wear them aren't experienced enough to stay off the bottom. And then the other side of it is they're just not really very efficient fins. Now, where their place lies is people, especially older people that may be a little bit arthritic, people that don't have a lot of strength in their legs, they will allow them to kick and not be overstressed on their joints. However, they're not very efficient. So like a split fin, if you're in current, good luck, man. You're going to be kicking your ass off. One of the guys that went through Dive Master with me started the class with split fins. And then one of the things you have to do is you have to do a timed 100-meter tow. So you're towing another diver 100 meters, and you got to do it relatively quickly. He had to tow me, and he had split fins, and I think that was the last time he ever wore them. so yeah, I mean, a lot of what you see online, and I'd like to preface too, and it's probably a little bit hypocritical because this stuff goes online too. There's a lot of experts online.
Oh yeah,
experts,
sure.
Air quotes, right? I'm a pretty big proponent of dive and let dive. If you like split fins, dive them, But they're just not. You can't frog kick in them. You can't back fin in them. I may end up in a pair when I'm 70. I don't know. But people with bad knees, ankles, yeah, they work pretty well.
Sounds like I might be getting split fins.
Yeah, never know. Well, but I would also make the argument on that, Tom, that you get to that point, we'll just put you on a scooter.
There we go. Hey, we're talking.
Sign me up for one of those.
Yeah. Scooter is that is the funnest thing you'll ever strap to you underwater. So, yeah.
So you mentioned current, and that was really one of my last questions. That's honestly my biggest fear, I guess I would say, when it comes to diving. Like I'm imagining if I'm out in the Caribbean or something, and I'm just picturing a down current I've read about where it's just pulling you under. How big of a concern is that, or is that more of like a quicksand thing that you always hear about and it's never really an issue?
Yeah, I'd classify that as let me put it to you in terms of this way. Have you guys lived in Kansas your whole life?
Yep.
Are you scared of tornadoes?
No.
Yeah. Same thing with
okay.
Dunkers.
Fair enough.
Yeah. They're out there, but the chances of you ever getting caught in one aren't really that great, especially if you're diving. If you're diving sites that are regular dive sites, it's just not.
Well, and that probably goes back to talk to the locals as well to kind of figure out where you should go and where to dive, right?
Yeah. Water is very, very powerful, right? The Vandenberg down in Florida off Key Largo is an enormous shipwreck. When they sank that, it landed on its side, and a hurricane came through and it stood it back upright. So water's powerful, right? It certainly is. But the down currents, yeah, you kind of got to be there. There's a lot of Powerball numbers that have to align for that to be a big issue. But yeah, so overall, I wouldn't worry about them too much. I mean, you've got to be basically on a wall. There's got to be something going on to cause it. But yeah, so. But talking about currents, I have never done it. I really want to. But there's a dive down the Bahamas called the Washing Machine that has this really ultra fast current. Look up some videos of it on YouTube. It looks so freaking fun. Like you're going basically over and it just tosses and tumbles you and everything. It looks like a roller coaster ride. Cannot wait to do that.
Yeah, have to watch what you eat before you go there.
Yeah. But well, awesome. So you guys don't have anything else?
I figure after getting the open water certified, I got a foundation now. I just got to build the house on top of it. So.
Yeah, that's an excellent way of looking at it. Well, yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys. I think it was a great episode. It's fun for me to get to just kind of answer your questions. It's something I don't always get to do. But yeah, so I will give you guys both some props as your certifying instructor. You guys both did fantastic, and I don't have any doubts that you guys are going to make fantastic divers.
Thank you.
So you guys,
I appreciate you answering all my questions.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be more as well. I'll reach out to you.
Well, yeah, anytime. Well, and you guys got the right attitude about it, so that's huge, right?
I'm sure there's lots of people that get certified just so they can go on a cruise and do one dive or something.
Yeah,
but I plan on making this more of a lifetime thing. There's a lot of things I want to do with it.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Vacation divers that just want to do it once in a while. Nothing wrong with that at all. But yeah, when I say you guys have the right attitude about it, is the trying to think of the best way to word it. And I believe this of anything. When you go in with humility and you're willing to admit you don't know everything, that's when you're going to learn everything.
Oh, right? Yeah.
So that's awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. And we'll have to have you guys back on a little bit later down the road, do a Where Are They Now type episode.
That'd be
Thank
great.
you for your time, sir. I appreciate it.
All right.
I'm just a clown, that's what they say. I guess my clothes